Okay, hello and good afternoon, Conversation 1 students, all my friends from Monday morning to Monday evening. It's hard to believe, but here we are, only a couple weeks left and the exam is upon us. So as I promised, we did miss a class somewhere because of a holiday, which we're making up. And then I was ill one time. So this is the final review, makeup, wrap up, recorded lecture. Everything all in one, 3 in 1. I don't think it's going to take very long to explain all this stuff. Basically, the final exam is the same as the midterm, as I've already explained, as I've already told you. The main difference is there's one more question, and it's worth 30% of your final grade, which is significant, whereas the midterm was 15. The rationale for that was that some people had less experience and some people had no experience, and some people had taken my class before and some people hadn't. So after the midterm is over, everybody's had at least one interview with me, so that levels the playing field a little bit. So that's why the exam's worth more. I explained to you all about the grading curve and stuff like that. So what I'm going to focus on is how to prepare for the exam. The best thing to do is to open up your textbook and look at the chapter headings and compare them to my list, because some of the chapters match very closely and are very useful, and they have dialogues and they have grammar points, and they have blogs, they have conversations, they have arguments, they have topics for discussion in small groups. Because we have almost 20 students in the class, we couldn't do as many of the activities as they offered in the book, and we were focusing on speaking things, so we sort of jumped over some of the writing things and reading things. I made the recording available to you because there's no CD. Nobody has CD players, so you can listen to the audio files for pronunciation, for grammar, for sentence structure, the same way that you listen to me. Sometimes you might think I speak too quickly. I try not to. I try to speak clearly. I don't want to speak too slowly because that's not the way people speak. And speaking really slowly if somebody can't understand a sentence is one thing, but speaking slowly all the time really doesn't get you used to how people speak in real life, you know? I know because I've never really studied Korean, but I've taken a few lessons here and there, and they say everything really, really slow and formally, like 감사합니다. And then you go out on the street and nobody talks like that. It's just 감사 and 감사합니다 and 고마워, and you know what I mean? There's all kinds of different words out there, and none of them sound like the one that I learned in beginner Korean. So I never made it past that class. Anyway, we're here to talk about English. Let me remind you how the first 5 topics work, because some of them don't match exactly the textbook. So I hope you're not just turning on this video and then going and having a sandwich and taking a nap and getting credit, because if you do that, you're going to end up responding in the wrong way to a question, and that's going to hurt your score a lot, right? Well, the most important thing is your answer is substantial enough, right? It's got to be a minute and a half. I said I don't really want answers over 2 minutes because we have limited time, but I don't want a 10-second answer or a 30-second answer. You can't get a good grade if you don't talk enough. The content there has to be enough of it, and you have to be on topic. You have to respond to the question I ask. As you know, all the questions are open-ended to an extent, right? So none of them are yes or no questions. It's not like, do you like Vancouver or Tokyo? That's not a yes or no question, that's a choice, but you just say Tokyo. Question over, right? Saying what's your favorite city and why, that is an open-ended question, right? Do you like Vancouver? No. That's it. So, first of all, when it comes to jobs, you have a lot of different choices as long as it's related to jobs. Looking for jobs, thinking about what job would be suitable for you, your dream job, a job that you think is dangerous and unattractive, or a job that you definitely don't want to have. I worked in a factory as a summer job, and having that job basically influenced me a lot because I don't know, I didn't know what job I wanted still. I just knew I didn't want to be a full-time career factory worker. So that could be an answer too. It could be a job that you're not interested in, but you have to describe the job and you have to tell me, use your vocabulary and tell me what's important about the job, why you're interested or not interested in it, or why it's suitable to your personality. Take your own angle and then put together a good answer related to choosing a job. Okay, open-ended question. Vacations, I specifically asked you, remember, you do have to indicate what type of person you like when you go on a trip. Are you the travel type or the tourist type? We talked about this in class, and a few people lost a few points simply because they just went ahead and described a trip. But you have to make a choice, okay? I know there's trips that are mixed up and stuff, but you have to lean one way or another. So you have to say, I do like to be comfortable, and everybody loves five-star hotels and delicious food and room service and free amenities and stuff like that. It's not like those are unattractive things, but when I travel and I stay in a five-star resort, I feel like I'm visiting a resort, not visiting a country. So I prefer to book, even if whatever hotel I book, I like to not be on a bus tour, not be in a group, but travel with a small group of some friends by myself and explore towns, cities, countryside, if I can, and get a sense of what the country's really like outside the walls of the resort. Okay, so you gotta lean. You don't have to be like 100%, backpacker or 100% middle-aged, group bus tour person, but you gotta say that which one you prefer. Okay, so don't forget that. Cities, you have to choose. Of course, it has to be a famous large city, and both cities have to be from different countries. That's the only rule. Doesn't matter what countries they're from, as long as they're not from the same one. Nature was an expansion because the topic in the textbook was, I believe, wildlife, which was sort of restricted to animals. So you can talk, if you like, about endangered species. You can talk about you can talk about any sort of wildlife. Some wildlife, actually, there's mosquitoes, they're wildlife, and they kill people and spread disease and stuff. They're part of the ecosystem, and they're part of the animal kingdom. Rather, they're part of the earth, the biosphere, and every little thing plays a role. But if you're not interested in animals, you can talk about the environment. Nature can be like, you can talk about earthquakes and you can talk about volcanoes, but don't talk about, for example, don't talk about an earthquake and then talk about the damage in Turkey and how many apartments fell down and stuff like that. Keep it focused on the nature aspect. Keep it focused on the animals, the forest, the geological things, the earth, the oceans. All right. If there's garbage going into the oceans, then of course, you got to explain what the consequences are, right? When there's a lot of plastic in the ocean, what does that do to the drinking water? What does it do to the marine life? Make your choice, as long as it's related to nature, but keep it close to nature. Don't deviate off into some sort of human crisis. Make sure you're focused on things that are not man-made, things that are not caused by human beings, right? Not human disasters, natural disasters, or or animals from the animal kingdom, from the wild. It didn't say domestic animals, like you can't talk about your dog and your cat. Okay, it's wildlife, it's nature. So no dogs and cats or hamsters or anything like that. I don't think anybody chose anything like that. Most people chose polar bears or pandas or bald eagles. So most of those answers were okay. Final one from the midterm was sports. Some people like sports, some people don't. But regardless, everybody seemed to be able to answer that question. I don't think anybody who got that question had much trouble. Some people said, "Oh, I don't like any sports, but I play badminton." That good enough, right? Well, I don't play any sports, but I love watching the Korean, World Cup soccer team. Or I don't like to watch sports, but I like to go to the baseball stadium with my friends, even though I don't know what's going on in the game. All that's good. I also said you can talk about the ridiculous amounts of money and how sports is a business, right? You can talk about a famous player. If you like sports and playing, you can talk about the rules of the game and how to play it, but that's more difficult. And the students that answered that tried to explain all the equipment and the rules and stuff. Really, 2 minutes is not long enough to explain all the rules and regulations and equipment and field space that is required to play a game. You don't have enough time to explain a real sport, a complicated sport with all the players and formations and stuff. Several people tried to do it with volleyball, and they just missed some important things because they just didn't have enough time. So I wouldn't recommend trying to describe an entire sport, because you can't do that in 2 minutes. It's too short. Okay, you'll get one of those, a random one out of 5. You don't get a choice. You don't get to defer. If it's the same question as on the midterm, deal with it. Go with the flow. So that's the first 5 chapters. As I said, some of them are modified, so make sure you remember the instructions. Same thing, there's going to be some small modifications in the second half too, because I don't think some of these questions work very well in one-on-one interviews for our purposes. So the first, chapter 6, the first possible question of the second set is about luck. And actually, we had 2 people present on luck already. So I think you guys have a handle on this. You can talk about bad luck or good luck. If you don't believe in luck, you can talk about a bad day, randomly bad day where a bunch of bad things happened. I think probably for me, when I first started at Chungnam, I can look back at this and laugh, but the first year I was in Chungnam, I did my first semester, and then my visa ran out and I didn't realize it until about a month afterwards. And then I went to the secretary and said, my visa ran out like 6 weeks ago in the end of December. What should I do? And she's like, well, I don't know. You're not supposed to be teaching when you don't have a visa. And I'm like, I know, but I didn't know it expired. And the staff didn't tell me, the university didn't tell me, the government didn't tell me, so I just didn't notice. So I just kept working. So I was very upset, and I was young, so I'm not ashamed to say I was pretty much almost crying, because I felt like I was going to get deported or arrested or something. But it ended up not being that serious. I went to immigration and they were really strict and like, you're not allowed to do that. This is a big mistake. And I was like, I didn't do it on purpose. It was an honest mistake. And they said that don't do this again. You have to pay Shimanwan. And I was like, Shimanwan? Here you go. And I left that building with my heart lighter than it's ever been in my life, because that $100 was a very small price to pay, considering I thought I might get kicked out of Korea for illegal behavior. So they just renewed my visa. I had to pay a fine, and they forgave it. And that was 12 years ago. That was forever. That happened, but the terrible thing, the terrible thing about this is that when what happened next? I I lost my wallet shortly after. Shortly after that happened, I lost my wallet, and then I went to get my driver's license renewed because I lost my driver's license, and I brought my passport because that's the only ID I had, right? And when I was going to get my new driver's license because I lost my wallet, I lost my passport on the bus. So I ended up getting my new driver's license because all I had was my alien card, but now I had no passport, right? And then, so I had no time to go get my new passport. So I finished the semester and then I broke my leg. And after I broke my leg, I needed to buy a car. And then I drove my car to Seoul with my broken leg to get my new passport. And that was 2009. That was the first half of 2009. I overstayed my visa. I lost my wallet. I lost my driver's license. I lost my passport. And then I broke my leg. So I had to buy a car and drive to Seoul to get a new passport because I lost it. That's a bad day. I don't think that's bad luck. Is that bad luck? That's just maybe. I don't know how those things could happen. Am I not paying attention? Am I not careful? I don't know. You could say that's some pretty serious bad luck though. Anyway, that wasn't one day, but that was a period of about 3 months where all those things happened. And it just, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to stay in Korea because one more bad thing and I wouldn't have the right kind of identification to do my job. Anyway, yeah, it's 14 years, 13 and a half years later, and everything's fine. It was just it was a rough start. So you choose whatever you want. A charm, unlucky thing, a ritual you do. Somebody did a presentation on Son Heung-min does like the same ritual every time he goes on the soccer field, and there's a bunch of other players who do stuff like that. Rituals, charms, bad days, good days, all good for bad luck or good luck, okay? Talk to me about something you consider a lucky situation or an unlucky situation. Object, situation, story, your choice. I changed the next one, whatever the title of that seventh one was, because just saying your favorite things just can be anything, absolutely anything, right? Your favorite thing can be the moon, or it can be cheese, or it can be a t-shirt, or it can be, I don't know, a computer game, or I don't know, your bed. It could literally, that's too wide. So I changed it to hobbies and interest. Americans and Canadians believe hobbies are things that you like to do, which are productive or develop you somehow or require some skills. So like reading can be a hobby, but scanning Netflix or TV channels or just, zoning out on YouTube or flicking through Instagram, that's not a hobby. That's just wasting time, right? You're just killing time. You might be even interested in it, but you're not gaining anything from it. There's incidental small pieces of information that you're getting from it, but you're not like every weekend learning how to make things out of wood. So after 6 months, you've made a chair. That's a hobby, right? If you start a puzzle that's 10,000 pieces and it takes you 2 months and you finally finish it, at the end you have a completed puzzle. If you scan into Instagram for 2 years, you don't. You have maybe you have a record of thousands of scans, and maybe some companies have a whole bunch of data on what you're interested in, but you haven't developed anything. You've just provided them a lot of advertising material, and you don't have a hobby. You're just a consumer, and you're just being harvested by Mark Zuckerberg and the Meta people. Okay. Sorry to break it to you. Memories means one memory. So I'm going to change that. Sorry, but a memory. It can be careful. Don't choose something that's too scary or too sad, traumatic, or makes you angry. But choose something that's very clear in your memory, something that you remember, a day, an event, and describe it in detail and tell me why you think you remember it and why it's important to you. That one's an easy one, I think. Do it in the past tense. It could be 5 years ago. It could be 2 years ago. It could be 10 years ago. It's up to you. Make sure you give the details though. Where, when, who, who are you with? Who are you with? What are you doing? Where are you? When is it? How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. And so on. Sorry, I shouldn't use that slang. And so on and so on. I love chocolate. For some people, that chapter's fine, but you can fall in love with anything. What's the difference between being in love and being addicted? Well, that's debatable, but I'll just give you a simple definition. My minor is psychology, and I would say when you love something, you want it, and you have trouble being without it, and you think about it all the time. But when you're addicted to it, you have to have it, and you don't have any control. You can't resist, and you'll do things that you shouldn't do in order to fulfill your addiction. This is completely possible if you're in love with somebody, but if you're in love with somebody and you're doing things you shouldn't do to impress them or to demonstrate your love, you're getting closer to obsession, right? If you're obsessed with somebody, that means you're sort of out of control, and that's what addiction is too. You can be addicted to technology, smartphones, chocolate, drugs, alcohol, PC rooms, computer games, right? You can be addicted to all kinds of things. When you try and stop and you can't stop, and you feel withdrawal symptoms, and then you go back to it, you're addicted. And when you feel those withdrawal symptoms, like you're smoking cigarettes and you feel like you want a cigarette, and you resist it, and then after a week, it gets weak. You don't feel as much like a cigarette, and you start to resist it more and more. Then you break your addiction. That's what addictions. That's the addiction cycle. You got to break that cycle, and it's tough. Depending on the addiction, some of them are mental, some of them are physical, chemical, emotional. But it's not easy to control yourself, and your environment makes a difference. So you can talk about what you want. Personal addiction stuff, it doesn't have to be somebody you know. It can be something from a story. If you do some research, you know the story well, you can tell me about it. Something from the news. It can be something from a movie. That's fine too. Last one. What is the title of this last chapter? It's something like "What's the Matter?" Maybe. I'm drawing a blank on what it is, but what I'm going to ask you to do is say, "Do you?" I think it's "Do you need help?" or something. But when you see somebody and they're struggling with something, you offer to them. You say like, can I help you? Or what's the matter? Or is something wrong? Or are you okay? Right? But that doesn't really work in an interview. So when I say, can you tell me about a situation where you could give some advice or support somebody, you have to create the situation. So in this kind of question, you have to think of a situation. Maybe it was a real one, right? That's the best situation, is that something happened and you helped somebody and you supported them and you gave good advice to someone. So then you just have to tell the story of what happened. Hypothetical ones or like scenario ones are more difficult, but that happens in job interviews. Sometimes they say, okay, this is the situation at work. What would you do to solve the problem, right? So it's fine to do a possible, problem situation, help situation, but it's also fine if you've already done it, you've experienced it, and you want to give an example. It's your choice. If you think you've given good advice to people before, when they've needed it, or you've provided support to somebody, when they've required support, um, conditional, possible, future, past, um, hypothetical, it doesn't matter, okay? As long as it involves advice and support. So 1 over there, 2 over there, 2 minutes each. So it's about 6 minutes total. Each person gets 10 minutes. Make sure you come 10 minutes before your class, before your time. Sometimes we get ahead, sometimes we're behind, but if we're ahead, then we just, try to keep ahead and keep going through them. So be there 10 minutes early, ready to go, and do your 3 questions in your 10 minutes, and then I will we'll say goodbye for the summer, and hopefully see you next semester. Thank you for all your effort, all of you Monday conversation enthusiasts, and I hope you enjoyed the class, and I wish you the best of luck on this exam and the others too. I'll see you on Monday.